Hey folks, Travis here from Thorium Sailing. Working on a little project here that I've been collecting some parts for a couple years now, maybe 2 years. I've had the idea to do something like this, but it's all starting to come together. I wanted to shoot a quick video to show you a work in progress. I'm not gonna lie, just a little bit embarrassed because it is still a work in progress, but sometimes seeing the steps along the way is a nice thing. Back in 2007, I had a student of mine that got me introduced to the Linux operating system, and specifically Ubuntu and OpenSUSE as operating systems, an alternative to Windows. And since that time, I've always played with Ubuntu. I've always had some device that was running it at some point or another. And the nice thing about Ubuntu is that you can put it on older hardware and it generally will run okay. In many cases it'll run really, really well, just because it has lower requirements than Windows. It's free and open source. It generally takes up less space, and for me what I've liked is that you get to actually play around with it a little bit. I don't spend a lot of time in coding in C or anything. I am not one of those folks. But even I can open up the terminal window, type in the sudo command, and start playing around with command line work, and it's good. It's just a good learning opportunity. On the boat, I've always been interested in having devices that can serve multiple purposes, and let me just say that I have this vision in my head, and that's all it is a vision. That on my boat I've got a computer system that I can just open up and do some writing. If it can connect to the internet, could do some quick browsing, but it could serve multiple functions and just be a device on board, separate from my phone, separate from a tablet or something like that, but that would be useful for the boat. I got an idea to look at the Raspberry Pis and see what capabilities they had, what you could run. And there's a couple of resources, I'll try to get links in the description below, that are project, I'll just say makers like me, that are out there hacking together hardware, seeing what works, what doesn't work. And there are a couple of recipes of Ubuntu or Linux at least, that you can run on Raspberry, a couple derivatives of Raspberry Pi itself, its operating system, that folks have done a bunch of different stuff with. Well, what I've tried to kludge together is a little boat PC. And unfortunately, Raspberry Pis have been very hard to find. So I took a tune from somebody and I actually got an Intel Next Unit of Computing, or NUC. I got the board on eBay for about $50, and then have had a handful of parts that I've had to pull together for this thing. But let me walk you through what this ultimately is and what I hope it's gonna be. So this case here is 3D printed because I bought the board, but there wasn't a case with it. I have a 3D printer that's worked out pretty well for me, and it's nice for prototyping things. Probably a different boat subject and video in the future on that one. Inside the case is a single board computer. It's got a relatively low power Intel chip on it. I had to buy a single stick of RAM. I think I went with an 8 GB stick of RAM, if I remember correctly. And then to that, I got a 120 GB solid state hard drive for speed. I did have to buy the data cable to get the whole thing hooked up together, which is kind of sort of a pain in the butt, as well as, and my friend Ken will hate me for this one, I just went on eBay and I bought the adapter for power supply. So right now here in my workshop, it is hooked up to just a regular old power brick. It supplies 19 volts. I've got an idea that I got to put into place as another step for this one as I implement it. On that board, I have the capability of putting a Wi-Fi module in one of the PCI slots that's left. I haven't been able to find one that fits yet. I was test fitting one that I bought, and unfortunately it doesn't work. So in the meantime, I am running a little USB adapter here that supplies a Wi-Fi signal, and that dongle goes to a all-in-one keyboard and mouse setup here, so I don't have to worry about losing a mouse. It's got trackpad, all the keys, on-off switch on the back, that way I don't worry about power. This particular model of Logitech also has a hard case so that I could store it safely, and that's another kind of step in the future for me. So right now it is connected up to my home network, but the neat thing that it is hooked up to, right, is this really, really thin Asus portable USB powered, USB fed external monitor. I got this on Facebook Marketplace. I think it cost me about $80 maybe, something around there. It was less than 100. Now I had to keep my eye open for a deal to come up before that happened, and also happened to work out that I got one that I could get shipping all inclusive within that. It uses a cable, and I won't pull it out here, but it looks just like an external hard drive style USB 3 that then plugs in to the NUC there. Now the challenge that I had in setting this whole thing up is that I booted this guy up. I loaded Linux on it using a USB drive, and I did all that outside of the case, more like a breadboard or on the bench, basically putting the components together. Out of the box, Ubuntu did not have the DisplayPort drivers to drive that screen, and so I had to use, on the side here, there's an HDMI cable. I hooked it up to an external monitor through HDMI. That worked just fine. So I had to use an external monitor to begin with to get everything set up, but once I got the drivers installed, I was able to drive this without an issue, and right now it will boot, and it will boot onto here. I don't have to worry about separate monitors for that. So 14-inch super thin Asus monitor, 3D printed case inside there, an Intel NUC unit of computing motherboard, 120 gigabyte solid state hard drive, got a little peripheral hardware. Now in this particular model, there's I 3D printed the power button that goes down to the power. It'll take a standard size SD card. It has a USB 3 and a standard USB 2 port there, as well as two small jacks. If I remember right, one of these is a reset. I have not been able to get those USBs to power up, so I got a little bit of troubleshooting to do, which is the reason why I actually need the port splitter. On this side, two USB 3s, one that's driving the monitor, one going to the splitter. It's got an HDMI port and then also a LAN port, which is a future project that I'm going to try to work on. I have a setup basically for a 3G modem that can run off of LAN that I kind of want to give a try. I've seen a couple videos out there of this. Now the important thing that this whole thing is purpose built for, in addition to your standard Google Chrome, and it's got a media player, and I can do some other stuff with it. My goal is that once I get onto the boat, I am going to get my USB GPS hooked up to this Mamma Jamma, and I will be able to run OpenCPM, which is an open source navigation program. As you can see, I've grabbed a whole bunch of charts right now for the Chesapeake Bay area. This is the area that I sail in. So I've got a resource here in addition to my onboard chart plotter. that I could pull up charts, I can pull up maps, I can pull up information. Several of the folks that I've watched videos or read websites of have other software that they've been able to integrate into their Ubuntu load. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing some of the things that we can do. On board, I have a 10 meter and I have the capability of having a 2 meter ham radio. So I'm interested in, is there an option for transceiving onto the device? One in particular that I'm interested in, and this is in the cunning plan category. I'm trying to see if I got it handy here. Nope, don't have it there. Is a software-defined radio module so that I can receive on my long antenna. And ideally, I'd love to be able to get weather facts or things of that nature that I can at least bring in. Another, and it may not be on this particular unit, it may be, I have a Raspberry Pi Zero that I'm tempted to use that as the platform for, is to put together an AIS receiver. I have no intention of doing transceiving on my boats, tiny little boat, nobody would care about me, but receiving, I can appreciate how nice that can be from my time doing at least submarine navigation types of activities. So one project that I've got to still work on, and I've been working on this tonight, just getting everything buttoned up, seeing what kind of other enclosures or clips or whatever else I might need to print. As I mentioned, this takes a challenge on the NUC as opposed to a Raspberry Pi, is that the NUCs take 19 volt power supply. And on my boat, I have a standard 12 volt setup. So what I got, and I don't have it unwrapped right now, but is a buck converter. And so I need to play around with this a little bit and see if I can get everything dialed in so that I can convert from a 12 volt to a 19 volt output and do it in a stable enough way. I have read in a couple of places, however, that these can take power below 12 or down to 12 volts and still do it safely. I don't know right now how tempted I am to play around with that. So anyways, a little project here. The other piece that I don't have out, that the goal is that all this stuff kind of gets clipped together onto the base unit so that I can use that power button there. On the back side of the monitor, I will probably double-sided tape or somehow other secure this to a piece of marine ply or some kind of plywood. That way I can attach the components onto that, and I have an articulating arm TV mount so that I can mount it to one of my bulkheads and kind of extend it out. I could have it in the cockpit, I could have it in the cabin, and I can kind of move it around over on the port side bulkhead of PandaPaw. So more than anything, I hope this inspires folks. If you got questions or anything, leave them in the comments. I'll point you to some resources that I've been using. Again, this is really an exploration still at this point in terms of what this is going to be on board. But it was a project I wanted to play around with and to learn as I was going. So, getting the NUC set up, getting Ubuntu loaded up, getting all the components to talk to each other was something fun to play with over the winter. And yeah, happened to be a rainy night, so I was just trying to see if I could get anything else done, and decided to film a little video about it. Hope everyone's doing well. Stay tuned for more videos as always, as I learn as I go. And we will see you the next time on Thorium Sailing.